Hello, I'm Robert, and this is to encourage all of you to be really careful over the next few weeks with Omicron. We just had a most unusual tweet from Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, and she's saying all countries to act now, not weeks from now. Now, she's saying it's a formidable virus, and she's never done a tweet like that before. She's one of the people I follow. She's the technical lead of COVID with the World Health Organization. And you've probably heard that this is a very mild virus. It might well be. They have said it may be milder than previous versions of COVID, but it's too early to know for sure. And certainly there are some serious cases and some people die. And what is so formidable about it this time is that it is expanding so much more quickly. So as an individual, then your personal risk, if you do get it, may well be lower, but your risk of getting it is far higher over the next few weeks. So be very careful and do get vaccinated and do get your booster and wear a mask and distance and everything. I did this graphic to help encourage people to wear a mask, which is so important with now with Omicron surging. It's a question, do you want to let others see your smile, or do you want to save others from ambulances? Because it's mainly as a source control. You are helping others more than they are helping you if you're wearing a mask, although it does give some protection the other way. And then your eyes can smile too. So we actually, when people wear masks, they smile around their eyes more. And that was a study done in Nature, published recently in Nature, and it said it measured activity of the muscle that lifts and creases your eyes into smile. And when people smile for a photo with their mask on, they use that more. So look out for that to see if people are smiling. So we can still smile with the masks on. And this shows how your biggest risk is from households. And that was before Omicron. And Omicron has hugely increased the risk of getting it from a household. But nevertheless, if someone in your household gets COVID, then 4 times out of 5, nobody else gets it. And that's even with Omicron. That's very new data, just come in the day before yesterday. It's 9 out of 10 for Delta, and for Omicron, then 4 times out of 5, you won't get it. So if for the Christmas, then I hope you're not going to be going to office parties. This is the time to give a miss to your office party, it's a time to have small gatherings at home where people are careful. And if anyone has even the slightest symptoms of what could be a cold or what could be COVID or just feeling a bit unwell, then immediately isolate to your room, even before you do the LFT test. Don't have people gathering around watching you while you're doing the test. And then you could also just isolate and anyway, even if the LFT test turns out negative, you're helping avoiding the others getting colds, even if it turns out to be just a cold. But sometimes you get a false negative for the LFT. And then certainly when waiting for the LFT to the PCR, just isolate. This is the WHO's advice. If you are a contact of a case, or if you are a case, and then over Christmas, I'd say with so much Omicron around, then even if you just feel a little bit unwell, and then when people visit you to bring you your meals, say, or something, then everyone should be wearing masks. The WHO actually recommend that you designate someone, usually the least vulnerable in the household, to bring the meals for someone who's got COVID, and always wear a mask when you're in the same room together. And they have these detailed graphic about what to do in that situation as the carer. So do be ready to isolate very quickly over Christmas, because what could be worse than to have a Christmas gathering and then everyone gets Omicron. And there's one thing you can try if you want to be ultra cautious. Then you could just try wearing masks habitually at home. And I don't know why. It'd be great if someone who was with expertise was to look into this and advise us properly. But there's a study from Beijing from early in 2020 where in families where habitually in Beijing they always wore masks at home during, even with nobody testing positive, then they had only a fifth of the transmission of the country, of the households where they didn't do that, and where they only would start taking precautions once they have a case. So this suggests that it certainly can't do any harm, and just wearing masks all the time. It might seem a bit strange, but it's only if it's going to be reducing the risk of transmitting COVID to others, then it might be something to consider, especially if someone in your house is vulnerable. And if many people did that, it might, and if it does have this fivefold reduction, because most of the transmission is happening in the households, it's a low-hanging fruit. This is where we could manage to counteract this huge surging potential of Omicron, is if we could reduce the transmission in households. Then on the vaccines, then the latest data is that the vaccines are doing very little to stop symptomatic disease, but they are likely to still be incredibly potent against severe disease and death. So the vaccines, they generate an antibody response, and it's a reduced amount but it's still there. And then if you have a booster, the antibody response is similar to what it was for Delta if you have a booster. But the vaccines are likely, the antibodies are only part of your immune system. You have the T cells, which the antibodies stop the virus getting into your cells. They kind of clog up the virus so it doesn't get in. And the T cells, they sniff around looking for cells that look as if they might be already infected, and then they kill them. And so stop the vaccine from spreading further. And the T cells, they have a much more holistic way of looking at the antigen, at the thing that lets them recognize the virus. And so they're much less affected by mutations. So the vaccine researchers expect the T cell response to still be very effective. And the T cell response is very important for severe disease. And the antibodies are too. But the antibodies also, they're not all gone. You've got a significant amount of antibodies left. And you have a huge oversupply of antibodies usually. So even a 40-fold reduction of antibodies is likely to still be quite a lot to fight against COVID, because you've got them right away, right from the beginning. The vaccines teach you how to fight COVID very early on, right at the start, whereas normally it would take your body 10 days to begin to realise that this is what you have to do to fight it. So our vaccines are likely to still be very effective, but we won't know for sure until the data comes in, and Dr. Maria van Kerkhove says to expect start to have the beginning of the good data on that before Christmas. So before the Christmas holidays, if you're meeting together for Christmas, by then we should have a much better idea of whether the vaccines work. Some people worry about the vaccine side effects. So do go and get vaccine. Don't worry. The side effects may knock you down for 2 to 3 days if you get it pretty bad. But the side effects of a vaccine are not like flu. With flu, you've got the side effects and you've got the disease. But with the vaccine isn't doing anything to your body. It's your body raising its temperature and developing headaches and everything in order to be prepared to fight an invader that isn't really doing anything to it. So it's only sort of half of what you get when you have the sickness. And this is why even really elderly people, and they can withstand their body temperature going up a bit in a fever. So this is why they vaccinate even old 90-year-olds and even frail people and sick people, but they still vaccinate them. It's not like giving them a sickness, because it's just their body reacting. It's not actually being attacked, because the virus is the vaccine is like a fake virus that looks like a virus to your body, so your body starts fighting back. But then when the virus doesn't do anything, then the body says, oh, well, bit of a false alarm there, and it calms down again. And then it gradually learns, and it looks closely at this invader, and it decides how to get rid of it. And then 10 days later, you've developed your antibody response and your T cells, and then you're ready to fight off the virus. And then you really get the best effects of the vaccine after the second dose, and about 7 days to 10 days after the second dose. So I'll just go down and talk. Yes, we'll find out how transmissible it is in days. We're already finding that. So I'll just give a talk about that. And then severe cases we're going to find out before Christmas. It was predictable that this would happen. It will evolve more. We're not blocking transmission enough. We've got to do social distancing, mask, working from home, ventilation. All that reduces the evolution of the virus, so it stops it from varying. Now I just want to talk about the first data that we've got. So you are more than three times more likely to get an outbreak in a household if a case in your house is COVID. It was 8.5% of Delta households with one case led to an outbreak, 19% of Omicron cases. So if you have a case in your household, you've got 1 chance in 5 that it will lead to an outbreak where lots of people get it. That still means, as I said, 4 out of 5 won't have it. But that's why you have to be especially careful this Christmas in your gathering. It's almost certain to be Omicron. If anyone in your gathering gets Omicron, you do have this 1 in 5 chance that it might spread and become an outbreak and infect everyone, or infect lots of people. And that's why I was particularly stressing, be careful and really react very promptly if you get a case in your household. And then your risk of getting COVID the other way around is nearly twice as high as for Delta. And then the vaccines, no reduction with AstraZeneca, only a 30% reduction in Pfizer of symptomatic disease. So even if you're fully vaccinated, but if you are lucky enough that you all have boosters, then your risk of getting symptomatic disease is reduced from 70 to 75%, so up to a quarter of the risk of someone who doesn't have a booster of getting symptomatic disease. They don't have the data yet on hospitalizations or deaths. And so far, there have been no hospitalizations or deaths from Omicron in Scotland. And so that's encouraging news. It's probably largely due to the vaccines and the high levels of immunity, but this is very early days. And just a reminder that ancestral COVID, and this new virus is most closely related to ancestral COVID. It's probably been in rodents, that's the biggest, the most likely guess, for about a year. And it's not related to alpha, beta, gamma or delta. It's got some of the mutations of those 4 variants, but it's not related to them. It evolved them independently. And it probably evolved, if it is milder, it probably got milder as a result of evolving in a different animal from humans. That's quite common. That is how Sabin made the polio vaccine milder, by evolving it through many generations of mice and other animals. And so it's not too surprising that COVID would go milder, because it adapts to the mice, and so it adapts away from humans. But now it's back to humans, then it's not necessarily going to stay milder. So that is the World Health Organization are very clear on this, that we can't know where it will evolve next. It's kind of random. The reason is that the virus, in order to spread, it wants to generate lots of virus early on. So it wants you to really produce lots of virus and infect other people. But what happens later? By then the virus is long gone, and when people get very sick and end up in hospital, that's not the virus doing that, that's your immune system doing that, because your immune system reacting to the virus. It's completely gone by the time you're in hospital, with most people, there's no virus left, or almost none, especially by the time you're in ICU and so on. That's your body reacting to a virus that is now gone and having adverse effects on your body and all the organs of your body. And so the virus, as it evolves, it's irrelevant to the virus whether whatever it does early on it puts you up in hospital or you end up dying, or whether it just has mild effects later on. And so the World Health Organization say, based on what we know so far, it's kind of random and it could go either way. It could go from Omicron to even milder, or it could go to more serious, and there's just no way to know where it's going to go next. So we've got to control it as much as we possibly can, and that is that. So just a quick reminder: during the while you are, if you're diagnosed, and even if you're not, then do be prepared to be very careful over Christmas. And it's not a good. We want to avoid going to hospital because if you need to be treated for COVID or indeed for other things, it's not going to be the best time if we do have a surge. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how mild it is. But by the time we get to Christmas, we will have a better idea. But it's not a vaccine. And then, then that's one more thing. So you might want to read my long article here about how COVID is not a vaccine, because why we can't just let it spread. And I think I'll do a separate video about that and then upload it, so we can have a look at that in a minute. And it's also quite hopeful in the end. We've got these marvellous vaccines on their way, but right now we have to be extremely careful. And hopefully by this time next year we'll be over COVID. It's not. This pandemic will come to an end, and we've got the amazing tools to deal with it. So I'll talk about that in my next video.